All right. Well, hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining in about the one with the shift from corporate to creative. And you'll understand what I mean by that as I kind of go into my discussion. And when I say discussion, I mean, I don't want to be talking at everybody for the next, hour. Like I'm hoping that we can have a conversation. If you have questions, please jump in. Let's just be super casual about this. But I'll just start off by saying I'm Jen Salerno, and I identify now as the host of the Room Block podcast, which is a podcast that is, well, we just had episode 4 released today. We actually have a guest, a guest in the room with us, Carrie Kelly. Thank you for joining. Carrie is one of my guests on the podcast that was just released today, so perfect timing. It's actually really good timing because episode 4 is about kind of making that jump into the unknown. So, which is in a way what I've done here. So, anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I'll get started. So, I identified today as host of the Room Block podcast, but that was not always the case. So, this picture is from January of 2020. And gosh, I mean, it's hard to believe it was so many months ago now. But if I were to ask you in January of 2020 where you saw yourself in 5 or 10 years, you'd probably be able to give me a pretty good answer. Maybe not perfect, but you probably had a decent idea of what your goals were or where you thought you might be heading. But you probably also had a pretty solid identity, right? And maybe it's an identity that you even wore on your neck around a badge or on a badge that was around your neck as you went from session to session at the last conference that you were at, right? That's like what maybe some of us did at PCMA. But so that's, and again, that was me in January. I was on stage, I was on a panel. This was at PCMA Convening Leaders, and we were presenting the findings of the Room Block of the Future study that was funded by industry giants like Hilton and New York and Company. This for me was like the pinnacle. I was so proud to be up on that stage as a panelist, being able to I was representing the third party perspective of this study. I was part of a housing bureau, one of the leading housing bureaus in the country. We handled about 400 events a year, and I oversaw the hotel contracting team, which was called Hotel Industry Relations. So I was very proud that my boss had asked me to take his place and go up on that stage and represent the company. And we all know what happened a couple months later, right? So that brings us to today and in this session. So basically, I want you all to take away from this session. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am and where, what my job history is. I'm going to tell you the story of the Room Block podcast and basically what its purpose is, and also some of the lessons that I've learned throughout this process. Okay, so let's start with, we can go back to that. All right, so I started in this industry in 2000. I started at the Palmer House Hilton as a concierge. And at the time, I had no idea that the hospitality industry was something that was a viable career. I kind of fell into it. It was like I graduated college, didn't have a job, and someone hired me as a concierge. Great job to have right out of school. But I learned a ton about the city, and then I started to see that there were people walking around the hotel wearing suits, and I realized that these were the corporate people, and it was the meeting, the convention sales folks or catering people. And I said, oh wow, you can actually have a career about, in the hospitality industry. Well, that kind of started me off. I worked my way up through convention services. I took a dive into the Convention and Visitors Bureau world, worked for Choose Chicago for a couple of years. I decided to go back into hotels and learn sales, which, I don't know if we have any event managers here, former event managers, but sales was kind of like, the dark side. But I figured it was something that I had to learn, right? I just really I had a desire to be well-rounded. And I went from my sales role to a role at the Sheraton Chicago, it's a big box hotel in Chicago. And it was very, very focused on citywide business and housing bureaus. And for those of you that might not know, Housing Bureau is a company that basically manages and sells hotel rooms to trade shows and conventions of all sizes. So the role that I had at the Sheraton was really focused on that. And so that's from there that I went to my Housing Bureau world, and I was with On Peak, that was the company, and that's where I had my my pinnacle moment. But essentially, as soon as, it was, I've been at On Peak for about 7 years, and 3 of those were in the director position. So I was really growing within the company, growing within myself. And that's why it was just really unfortunate, like for so many of us, when COVID hit, because we all kind of had to just stop. We were stopped in our tracks of what we were doing. But as I think some of us might be finding, there's always that silver lining, and there are, sometimes things happen for a reason, right? So I've sat in on a few other sessions today that really kind of have a similar topic as this might. When I say that, I mean, how to come back from a setback, or how to lean into the uncomfortable and make something new. Well, I did go through that process. That's what I did do. And I feel like, the grieving process that some people mentioned, I feel like I went through that maybe really fast, fast and hard. I oversaw a team at On Peak of, there was 14 of us total. And so when I went on furlough, and eventually was laid off, but when I went on furlough, I was mourning and grieving. So not only the loss of the job, but the loss of my teammates and everybody that reported to me, and that I so enjoyed mentoring. I missed my boss, our clients, customers, other industry people. I mean, everyone's kind of gone through the same thing, that grieving process. But one thing that I think might have pushed me through it a little faster was my husband. And that is, we would have these conversations, and he would kind of remind me about something that he went through in a similar way about 10 years ago, where it was right around the last recession that we were in. And he worked for an art gallery, and there was a really unfortunate thing that happened. The gallery closed, and he went and started his own business too. So he kind of helped push me through, like, stop feeling sorry for yourself, and like, let's make something good come out of this. So I did. I tried. But what he also did in that conversation that I had, I mean, I guess I'm trying to display the importance of talking about that grieving and talking about the tough things that you might be feeling or going through. Part of the conversations that we had was, he reminded me of something about myself. And that was before I had children. I have 2 young children, 6 and 9, and they keep me very busy, right? Especially now, because I'm teaching them too. But he reminded me that I was a little lost, and that I didn't really have I didn't feel like I had much of a purpose in life. And I was trying to figure out what the meaning of my life is, or what it was supposed to be. So through talking to him, he kind of reminded me of all that. And he reminded me that when I first went to college, it was for journalism. And I had an interest in people and such an innate curiosity about people. And then it also made me think about that when I was a kid, my sister and I used to sit in front of a tape recorder and record ourselves talking. We would do like fake radio shows for hours. So you might be seeing a theme here. But and all that self-reflection also helped me think about the times in my career that I felt the most fulfilled. So you're looking at a picture of me on stage right there. That was one of them for sure. Being part of a conversation, helping to facilitate a conversation, or a tough conversation. And we're up there talking about attrition and cancellation and tough contractual terms, that kind of debate between meeting planners and hotels, and me as the third party. those are tough conversations, but they had to happen. They have to keep happening. So that's kind of when I felt most alive, was when I was participating in that kind of situation. And also, just being in the hospitality industry, just that desire, that empathy that I think so many of us share, and love for other people. And I've heard it also today several times, that kind of servant mentality. We want to be there for other people. So, and honestly, I can be one of those introverted extroverts or extroverted introverts. Like I'm not the first to speak up in a meeting. I like to kind of sit and listen and try to understand what I really want to say before I say it. And so getting in front of a microphone, it gave me a voice. It gives me a voice where I really didn't feel like I had one before, or it was pushing me to have a voice. So the starting a podcast was kind of my chance to touch areas of my life that were meaningful to me. So that's how I kind of decided to dive into that, to start one through all that process. So what is the Room Block? So the Room Block podcast is basically it's a dedication. It's dedicated to the event industry, hotels, hospitality, at every aspect of our industry. Basically, I don't want to shut anybody out. I haven't really dived into restaurants yet, but why not, right? But the passion that I have for the industry, this was a chance in my mind to kind of give back, especially during this time where I was grieving so much. This was like a way to help me deal with my grief, because I was able to talk to people and to share their stories. So the format of the podcast is to invite two guests every time I have an episode, which I release on every 2 weeks now. But so the purpose is that I would have these two guests on, and it would be a place to share stories, and a place for the guests to share, what drives them, and what, it's a way to get into their mind and soul. I made a decision to not have a podcast that was going to talk about the daily, the news in the industry, the, what's happening, what's the latest in with the coronavirus and how it's impacting our industry. What are your forecasts? What precautions are you taking to overcome this? I don't want to talk about that, because there's a lot of other podcasts that are doing that right now, right? And besides, we were inundated with that information all the time. What I was trying to do was find the underlying passions of my guests, and I wanted to put that out there to people. So it was also, as time went on, as the months went on and we got into June, July, and a lot of the social unrest really started to happen in the country, I realized that doing this podcast was also a way for me to feel like I was possibly making a difference, where it's something that I've always struggled with, and maybe some of you had the same experience, where you were seeing some of the things that were happening across the country and thinking, ugh, like, I feel so helpless. What can I possibly do to try to help? Now, I'm not saying the podcast is helping that, but in some small way, I felt like it was contributing something valuable to society, something that was it was meaningful to me, and I felt like it was meaningful to some other people. So in a small way, it helped kind of satisfy that need in me. But podcasting is such a cool medium because it can live forever, and that's why I wanted to stay away from timely news information. And I kind of wanted to make it more about leadership and themes that could live on, discussions that could live on. Because in my mind, this podcast for me, it's almost like a book, and it's like a love story to the industry, and each episode is like a chapter. So that's kind of the best way that I can describe it. But my whole idea is that by sharing our stories, we can come up with better solutions, because the more we understand each other, the more we can actually accomplish. So in my mind, that was literally what I was setting out to do with the podcast. So the thing that was really cool was that when I released back at the beginning of August, um, I actually got a really great response. And I was not expecting, well, I was thinking, my mom and my husband would listen and that was it. But I actually got a decent amount of listeners. And I was getting messages, and I still do. I get messages from people that I don't even know telling me that listening to it helped brighten their day, or they felt like they were sitting at a dining room table having dinner with old friends. Because some people hear familiar voices, or even if they're not familiar voices, they're telling stories that resonate. So to me, the reward was in the response, because I'm hearing people, I'm seeing evidence that I actually was able to touch somebody's life, even in a small way. But again, during this time when you're so desperate to feel like you can do something positive, I realized I was able to do that. So it was really huge. But I'm going to pause here and just see if anyone has any questions. Well, actually, so I want to ask Carrie, if you don't mind. So Carrie, like I mentioned, was a guest on the podcast episode that was released today. So Carrie, could you maybe explain what the experience was like for you to be a guest?
Sure. Well, I'll share, and just for the sake of everyone here, Jen and I we're friends, but we've been colleagues, peer colleagues, industry colleagues for, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years, something like that. So we've had a nice relationship over the years. And so we had worked together. And so we established that relationship and had that there. But Jen had asked myself and another industry colleague / friend to do her podcast. And it was the first time that I had ever done a podcast before. I've done some webinars here and there, but never a podcast. And I was talking about my experience, which I had left my corporate job about 4 years ago now, and started my own business, it's called Soul Mining, and focused in the events industry, and just focusing on different facets of the industry, meeting planning and so forth. And it was just interesting just to get on a podcast with Jen and just share that experience. I've talked about that experience a lot, with friends, family, industry colleagues, and so forth. But to actually get on the podcast, it was therapeutic. It was fun because, as I expressed, Jen and I have known each other. Dalia Algazar, who is the other guest, and who is here at the age of conversation, I think actually speaking now.
Yeah, she is.
Competing against each other.
Yeah.
But, both of them, we had this relationship, but very much rooted in respect and, really rooted in respect. And we're friends, but it was just really, it was just a really wonderful experience. I will admit, I have not listened to the podcast yet. I'm waiting to listen to it because of course, afterwards, oh my God, what did I say? Because I guess here's what it is. Jen mentioned, the response was sitting around a kitchen table or dining room table. And I think, we've all listened to podcasts and we know what it's like. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about podcasts, that they're conversational, they're comfortable, and it's just you're just invited in, you're sitting there with them. So it just, from the guest experience, it was just a cool experience, hoping that we can provide some kind of insight, inspiration, whatever it might be regarding our topic. But it was also a little bit therapeutic, and it was helpful just in my growth. And Jen is a complete professional, and I have to say it's been so impressive. It was her fourth episode, but just a well-oiled machine. It was really impressive.
Oh God. Well, thank you.
No, but how you have it done, because there's so much work that goes into it. It's not just this easy thing. Let's get out a tape recorder and
Right.
play and just start talking. There's a lot of thought in how it's produced. So I loved it. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I was just so thrilled that you participated. And I think that you saying that it's therapeutic and that it was a, felt like a rewarding experience for you. I mean, I think that probably speaks to how a lot of us feel in the industry is we want to give back, right?
It,
We want to
yes.
share our experiences and our stories because we know, especially it's funny to reach the point where, now I've been in the industry for
Mhm.
2 decades, and it's like, oh wow, I'm not the most junior person anymore, and I might have something to share that maybe somebody else will find valuable when if they're in 25 or 26, where I was 15 years ago. So
Yeah, it's so true. And I think it goes without saying, it's just when you share stories like that, it's just you're gonna touch somebody and hopefully just be inspired. And there's mentors older, mentors younger, and I just think it's so beneficial all around. So
yeah, well, thank you again.
yeah,
But
thank you.
so I'll just go through real quick and talk about some of the lessons that I learned throughout the process. Again, so I'm going to, obviously 4 episodes in, I'm not a podcast expert, but there are lessons aside from just podcasting that came out of this, like big time. So first, I'm just going to say that if anyone is looking to go out and try to start something new, some kind of creative endeavor that might actually cost some overhead, like a podcast, I had to get a microphone and a hosting service, but there's a budget for everybody, right? So my advice would be just identify what your budget is and then go for the highest quality that you can within that budget. And then anticipate that as time goes on, you'll have the ability to either increase that budget or maybe you have to decrease that. But it's just, um, we, my husband helped guide me there too. And we talked about just trying to at least start off with something that sounded like a good quality, knowing who my audience was going to be, or who I hoped my audience to be. Again, more than just him and my mom. But yes, industry professionals who, I admire and who I hope would listen and view this as a viable source of information and something that they wanted to listen to. Um, the other, let's see, what else can I say? Oh, the amount of new skills that I've learned from doing this podcast is crazy, and I'm really excited just to keep going down this road. Interviewing skills to start off. Again, every episode I have 2 guests, and so this is really, it was kind of my joy of moderating conversations that gave me the idea to have it as always have 2 guests. So that's kind of my recommendation, because I like the challenge of hearing conversation between 2 people and then trying to pick up what the key points are and keeping the conversation going. So it's a little different than just having a one-on-one interview with somebody. It puts me in a slightly more challenging position, but I like that, because that's what gave me a lot of joy in the times that I got to do that in my job prior. But there's also a lot of chance to increase my writing skills, or tech skills, sound editing skills, and then other things like time management. I have to keep in mind that I'm inviting people to take time out of their day to schedule a time for a call, need to make sure that they're up and running with the tech that's required. There's a lot that goes into it. So I appreciate Carrie saying that she feels like I was a well-oiled machine, because it was a lot more than I was anticipating. But that's okay. You just gotta run with it. But marketing skills is a whole new ball game, and I wish I could have stayed in more sessions today about how to market yourself and how to get yourself out there, because that is definitely a skill I need to continue to learn. Social media, we're so lucky to have it. I mean, it's a pain in some ways, right? But we're really lucky. It's basically free marketing. So it's the Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, that is the only way that I put this out there at the moment. I haven't started an email list yet or anything like that. I'm just relying on social media for right now, but the power of it is amazing if you really try. So that's something that I'll keep trying to get better at. But public speaking skills obviously is a big deal. It's something that anyone in the industry, well, anyone really, it's a hugely valuable skill for any of us to learn. So any chance that I get, I suppose I could have done a pre-recorded session here, but I said, no, I want to get up there and talk. I need to, it's something that I need to keep getting better at. So that's why if I sound a little bumpy, it's because I'm still learning, right? But each time I do it, it's going to push me to get that much better. But it's a resume builder. So I don't know what my resume is going to look like, or where it's going to be sent out to next. Who knows? But I can put this on there now, and that's something that I'm proud of, to be able to say that I started a project and I took it and took it from a little seed and actually got it out there. It's really cool to look back to a couple months ago when it was still just a microphone sitting in a box before I actually did anything with it. And then now here I am putting out episode 4 was out today. So that was really cool. But yeah, so it's just seeing the tangible results, the fruits of my labor is really, has been really exciting. But so again, for people who might want to create and are nervous to put themselves out there, like I was and still am, you can't be afraid to do it because you're afraid that no one will look or listen. Because here's the thing, if you don't do it, that guarantees that no one will look or listen, right? That's the only guarantee if you don't do it. But if you do, and even if, there's a chance that people will look and they will listen and they will like it, but even if for some reason they don't, then at least it's something that you went through. It's an experience that you went through. So I can't stress enough that if you're thinking about trying something that's really out of your comfort zone, you're going from a desk job to sitting in front of a microphone or painting or whatever it may be, you just give it a shot, because you never know. Chances are there's going to be people that want what you have and want what you're putting out there. Some of my favorite podcasts to listen to are, for example, Judy Holler and her Fear Boss show. And I don't know if anyone's ever listened to that, but, she talks a lot about, there's abundance in the world, and there's a lot of opportunity, and everyone has their own style and their own way of putting something out there. So, admittedly, that really helped me starting this podcast, because hello, there's hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there. Did the world really need another one? But I'm like, well, no one else is out there doing it. They're not going to do it just like I am, because there's only one me, right? But and then the thing that I also had to remember is that in addition to people wanting to listen, there's also people that want to tell their stories. And I kind of spoke about that with, our industry and wanting to give back. But I really think that that's true, because you can, by telling your story, you can help somebody else. And you might not even realize that, but you might really, you might not realize how much you can actually touch somebody's life. You could be selling your service that might be helping somebody, or you could be motivating somebody into doing something new, or just sharing lessons. I mean, basically it's a generosity of spirit that I think embodies this industry. So I'm hoping I won't have any shortage of guests who want to share their stories and tell us about what drives them. So if you do decide to make a shift, I guess I just implore you to do it because it's something you truly want to do, and not something that you just believe there's a market for, because it is a lot of work to really go all in on something. But we're in this time where, we're kind of forced to be in a position where we can make these decisions right now. And in a way, I would say, hopefully we're not ever in this kind of situation again. So it's you're here now, take the chance, because again, hopefully we're just not going to find ourselves in this kind of global pause that we're in right now. So that is pretty much all I have. I do have up on this slide that you can hear the Room Blog podcast on any of the platforms that you would normally listen to podcasts on. So Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, a variety of things. The website is roomblogpodcast.com. It is barely done. I have a lot of work that I still want to do on it, but baby steps, right? We're all in different stages of our journeys. So I'm hopefully in a few months, you'll maybe visit the website and see a lot more done to it. But can I answer any questions for anybody at all?
I know
Jen,
Tam's.
this is Tamsin. I actually have a couple of questions just about getting started on a podcast. So
Sure.
I think that age of conversation, many of us are without a safety net, right? And this is providing us a safety net, which is fabulous. But maybe shoot out like a couple of the best resources to get you started, to give you, the courage to do a podcast. I mean, certainly there are the platforms, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, but what resources did you go to, your go-to resources for learning how to launch this?
That's a great question because I started with the simple Google. I mean, literally just Googled various things I was thinking how to start a podcast or, what equipment that I needed. It is overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff out there. And so one thing that I found that really helped was there's a Facebook group called Podcast Movement.
Okay.
They actually have an event that I think it's in October coming up here. Normally it would be an in-person event, but they went virtual this year. But really, really helpful. There's like 40,000 people in the group. But it's very active. And then it's one of those situations, I don't know if you're in any other Facebook groups, but if you just search for the term that you're looking for, the phrase, I guarantee the question's been answered. So that really helped to narrow it down. And then, if you have additional questions that for some reason aren't answered, of course you can ask. And everybody in the community seems very willing. And it was kind of cool because I enjoy being in that kind of like-minded group where you have people who write in and say, well, what if no one listens? Or what if, how many listens until I know that I've been successful? I've only had, one or two people listen, or 3 or 5 or whatever it may be. And the more seasoned podcasters on there say, just keep going. Just keep going. Keep putting out the best episodes that you can and just keep going. Like, just don't worry about the number of listens. Don't worry about, if you're getting engagement, just keep doing it and it will grow. It will catch on if you're putting out shows that you truly believe are the best that you can put out.
Okay.
As far as resources,
did you have somebody that you reached out to that just kind of helped guide a little bit?
I'm trying to think if I did not ever actually reach out to somebody, but like Carrie, for example, I know you had a couple people that you said were invaluable podcast resources, like people who are much more seasoned than I am, who have done that. I don't have the gentleman's name off the top of my head, but I didn't. It just kind of relied, like I said, on Googling, getting overwhelmed, and then trying to get a little more specific with Facebook groups.
Okay.
So how did you decide the platform that you were going to use? Because there's so many different platforms, and you said you chose one. How did you decide that?
Like a hosting platform? Good question. So there's so many. So the host for putting a podcast out in the world, it's not just a matter of having a website. Like, you can't really upload your files directly to a website and then let people download them from there. They're too large. It takes up too much bandwidth. So you have to hire a hosting service. Names that you might be familiar with are Anchor or Blueberry. I use Castos, but there's a ton. The reason I chose Castos was because it had a plugin so if you had a website, then you can actually use that plugin and use your existing website for your podcast. So where something like Anchor, you don't have to have a website at all. You can avoid that whole process. But for me, I wanted to build a website, even though I don't know what I'm doing with that, which is why I joked about it looking, minimal at this point in time. But I wanted to leave it open in that in case I grow this into something more, which at the moment I don't know what that might be, but I wanted to at least just grab the name, have it, just kind of own that domain. So Blueberry is another hosting provider that has a plugin that works really well with WordPress websites. But I can't get too technical in my conversation because it's just not my forte. But I mentioned Anchor. So for example, Anchor is free. It's completely free. I did not opt to use that because I said I have the website and I wanted to use something that could plug into the website. But also, I wanted to pay for a service if I could afford it, just for the peace of mind that I would have support, and that the website that it would still exist. Because if it's a free service, I suppose I was just concerned that there was no guarantee that it would exist down the road. You never know, right? I'm not sure how they make money if it's free, but so I've really enjoyed using Castos. It also has the ability, I have not gone down this road yet, but it has the ability to broadcast onto YouTube. So if I ever wanted to actually record my episodes and post them on YouTube, it has the ability to do that seamlessly from the site. So and it's really easy. When you record an episode, you basically just upload it to your hosting platform. And if it's a good one, they should take, after some initial setup, after that, your RSS feed updates to all the podcast platforms. So like last night, I go on and I just update my feed with my latest episode. And then a few hours later, it appears on Spotify, it appears on Apple, it appears on Google. So it's pretty easy. There's setup involved, but once you get past that point, then it's easy. I did get a microphone.
Yes, what kind of microphone did you choose? Because there are a bunch of those too.
There are. So I went with, again, it's within my budget, so it's not the greatest microphone that you could get, but it's certainly not the worst. But so it's a Yeti Nano. So Yeti is, I think the Blue Yeti is a microphone that a lot of people might have heard of before, but it's just a USB mic. It just plugs right into my computer. So it's cute and little.
What is the little panel called? The little pop?
This is a pop filter. So I will say the one thing about this microphone, it's really sensitive. Which is good, except that it really, like when you say your P's or your T's or your S's, the pop filter kind of helps to soften that a little bit. They call them plosives, I guess, when you say P's or T's.
Well, it works very well.
Thanks. I hope it sounds good on your end.
It does.
Okay, good.
Sounds very clear.
I just have to give you kudos, Jennifer, for doing this. I think it's so gutsy of you. And I think anybody, that's been in the corporate world or whatever you want to call our career paths, when you throw yourself into something that you're not that familiar with, I think that's where you can really see some of your strengths come through. And I think you're, and I worked with On Peak for years. Lisa Baez is one of my dearest friends, but these are unusual times. And I think all of us that are looking at our next chapters, what's that going to be like? And I think this is a really cool idea. And I think there's just lots of ways where you can go with this, which I think will be really cool as well. So kudos to you. I just followed you on Instagram. And I don't know what number I am of your followers, but I just did, because I think I'm really into podcasts. I really am. I found that these are some of the most authentic and real conversations that we're having. So I like that. So kudos, just a little rah.
Thank you, Lori. Yes, I recognized your name, and I don't think I don't know that we've ever spoken before, but
I don't think so. All those
pleased to.
years, because I know Michael and Louise, and worked with everybody for many many years. So it's just so weird. But how we get connected is karma. I'll call that karma.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the beauty of this industry, right? Because as large as it is, it's actually so small.
It's super small, super small. Right? We are. Unfortunately, we're hidden from the government. That's a little sad thing, but it's all going to change in our next playbook for going forward. We'll never be invisible again.
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah, the effects of the unemployment in this industry, it's now that other industries are being hired back, people are finally seeing, oh, wait a minute. It's a huge group of people.
It's shocking. It is shocking. And it's shocking how much the government doesn't know what we do, doesn't even understand what we bring to the table. How we got lumped in, events and conferences got lumped in with festivals and concerts, I'll never understand. That's not economic impact. And I don't understand that at all. And I still don't get it. And I live in California, and there isn't one convention center basically that's open, which is shocking, right? They've been shut down since March, and I don't know how. And hotels, you guys know. And I want you to read. There's a great letter, a love letter to the community from Arnie Sorensen. He just put it out, and he's the CEO of Marriott. Beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Oh, so. The last time I saw him communicate, I cried. So I'm
he's
sure.
So empathetic. Well, he has stage 4 pancreatic cancer on top of everything. Yep. He's challenged, but oh my gosh, you guys, there's just some amazing people, leaders that are coming out of this. It's pretty amazing.
It's true.
It's a lot, not as much as I would have thought from our industry associations. I would have thought much more, but I think it's the people like you, Jennifer, just bringing real stories and bringing real connection. And just like this event today, we just sort of fell into it. And you guys planned it, what, 6 weeks ago?
We did.
So there you go. There you have it. There's guts, right there. Who would plan a live event? Who would do that without, in 6 weeks? And
with a whole planning team that had never done one.
That's right. See, and that's what it was. Watch their YouTube video. It's their planning video. Best. It's the best. Real.
Well, I mean, that's what's so great and about trying something new. I mean, you have to do it. Everything is, you do everything for the first time at some point, right? So if it's the virtual event with 100 speakers, I mean, it was ambitious to do that in such a short amount of time, but you did it. There's been people in every room all day long.
Yeah. Well, we were given the leeway to be able to do that too. So it came from Liz and Nicole. It was great. Like, think differently, think out of the box, try something new. You never say no. They just say, we want more. Do it, keep doing it. So it was great. It was a lot of fun. Most of the time.
Good.
We weren't turning gray.
Well, thank you, Lori, also for mentioning Instagram. But so I do have a page for the room, or a profile page for the room block on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So that's where I post my updates. Then I'll share them on my personal stuff too. But
and you can also go live on those, shooting video on those a little bit just behind the scenes of your podcast would be very interesting. A little behind the scenes fun thing that you just post up, and it's really, the whole thing, Instagram Reels, and there's just some fun stuff out there that just would get you more curiosity, because just like you said, it's the best marketing vehicle you could ever ask for, and people are searching for that stuff.
Oh,
right?
Vulnerable moments, I mean, I know, I know, like I want to. And it's one of those things that will be my next, brave step, is to do some reels or do the stories with a video. Like I'll do a story of a photo. That's fine. But a live video of myself talking, which is ironic because here I am, or I can go on the podcast and speak live, but it's different when you're doing it a video with your phone. So yeah, like that's I totally agree with you. I would love to get to the point where I've got some behind the scenes footage and just to make it fun. I mean, that's the whole point, right? And I think people want to see real life and vulnerability with the marketing these days. I mean, we've seen plenty of pretty pictures and none of us are actually perfect in real life.
And
So
fake, and a lot of fake out there. So
yeah,
that's the thing we want to get away from is
Yep.
fake. I
Yeah.
also mentioned the delegate wranglers. They're pretty funny. These are two guys. And just check them out. They're, it's just broadening your, just watching other people just go after certain parts of our industry, and they're trying to, they've got a pretty good following, but just going out there and watching that's where you can get a lot of good ideas too. Other people, other little podcasters or.
What were those called?
It's called, I just started, they're so funny. They're actually humorous. They're called the Delegate Wranglers, like Wrangler pants, WRANGLERS. And if they've got an Instagram, they've got a Facebook community. Their Facebook community, I guess, is pretty massive. They don't have much on Instagram, but they have in their little bio, the event industry's most engaged community, over 21,000 members worldwide. They're more global, Jennifer, because that's where you've got to sort of watch some of the global thought leaders out there. They're farther along in the recovery process of this, so they're broaching different, levels of uncomfortable and comfortable. Right? It's a little bit of both. They're going after the mix of it, and you're watching the event industry evolve.
Well, that is a really good point. And I'm sorry to say that I don't have a really great grasp on international events and the international planning committee or planning community.
I did not either, but I reached out
Yeah.
to him because I was desperate. We didn't have the answers here in the US, for goodness sakes. Everybody was just going, looking at each other going, what are we going to do? And I have to say, I found a huge community out there, and they're so engaging and want to, really, it's a lot of think tanks and thought leadership groups. So reach out internationally too. And I'll sort of, I'll link in with you, and then I can sort of, you can see who I've connected with, and sometimes that's helpful. Same thing on Instagram, who we're following, right? I'm not a big Facebooker. I don't want my high school friends finding me, right?
And they will.
I don't want somebody from my past, like who? But no, I really like Instagram is because all visual. I like more visual.
Well, and it keeps the politics out of it.
That's
A little more.
A little more. I'm a little
more.
concerned, but yes. Okay. We won't go down that path, right?
Right.
All right.
What is your Instagram, Jen? I'll put it in the chat.
Hmm?
What is your Instagram, Jen?
Oh, yeah. What's your Instagram?
Oh,
It's the board, isn't it? Isn't it the room block?
well, so it's Room Block Podcast.
Not block, just room block?
Right. So not the just Room Block and then using the word podcast at the end. So
Okay.
Room Block Podcast. And then my personal is JT Salerno.
Oh, I couldn't find you on Instagram. That's why, because you got a lot of different. Got to get that the standardization, right? But there's another JT Salerno. That's not you. Is that you? I can't tell.
Is it?
Oh yeah, that's you. That's you. Okay, I think I got you. Okay,
That was the
good.
beginning stages of my growing out hair process.
I'm like, she doesn't have long hair. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay,
Well-
no, when I clicked onto it. Okay, I followed
I
you.
know.
All right, good.
Yeah, that's me.
I had a pixie cut at the beginning of this.
Oh, did you? I know. I finally got my whole Instagram thing all figured out. It took me a while, and and developing your own brand, right?
Yes.
Because that's our keyword, brand.
Well, it's true.
It is. We are. So it's good.
Well,
Well,
and sis,
Pixie was my brand. Now I don't have it. Now what?
What?
what was
My
that?
Pixie was my brand.
What was your brand? You cut out.
My Pixie. I
Oh,
had
your pixie cut.
Oh,
yeah, a
Well,
very
now you got to create a new one. You got to evolve.
yeah.
And but it's. I didn't know how short your hair was before, but yeah, you just create a new one. And there's so many cool things you can do. It's mind-boggling. So
well, so
this
speaking
was
of brand,
fun.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that in my logo here, that is a photograph by the lovely Carrie Kelly, who's on this call. She is also a photographer, a very talented
Very
one.
nice.
Yeah, so that's
Very nice.
so thank you, Carrie.
Well, I actually like the old school bells.
I love them.
Aren't those? That's sort of, because we can remember those days.
Yeah. Have you been to the Scott Resort in Scottsdale?
I have not been in years.
So I went there last year, probably right about this time, and I think they had just recently undergone a massive renovation, but I think it's probably my most favorite property now. It was just delightful in every sense. In fact, you can hire a photographer upon check-in for $500. You get your Instagram worthy photos. Yeah.
Oh, are you kidding?
No,
Well,
so
that's
then,
an idea.
$500 there.
Like Disney World.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I mean, the landscaping, it's, pools and little vignettes and all kinds of really cool stuff. Oh, I loved it. It was great.
Oh, that's
Coffee
very
too.
cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. I like the photo. It's really nice. And then YouTube's your friend too. Remember, that was like, I was talking to Tracy before in the session before about how you can just do so much stuff on YouTube and create your own channel within that. And that's something really good. And I think the Delegate Wranglers have one that you should look at too. Just the way that they did it. It's a little bit different, but I'm learning more from how I want to take in my learning. I think I think this is all about us evolving into different types of learners and how we want to share and collaborate and who we want to do it with. It's forced us into really a whole different way of communication because we can't physically get together. That's where we're most comfortable, right? You can't just, I'll meet you over here, and you run into somebody and you go, let's go and have a coffee or something, and you don't even do that anymore.
No.
It's so weird.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned about YouTube and made me think about if I were ever to put this on video someday. The recording platform that I use, in case anyone was interested, is it's called Squadcast.
Oh.
So I don't just use Zoom. And it's funny because we were chatting about Zoom and some of the challenges with Zoom right before this call started.
Yeah.
So for that reason, because I've known that, I've seen that, I've witnessed it. So Squadcast is a platform where it looks just like Zoom. So I send my guest a link and they just have to click on it. They don't have to download any kind of application to use it. You do have to use it from an actual computer, not your phone, but it works just like Zoom in the sense that there's video. It does not at this time record the video, but the video is there so you can talk and have conversation by looking at your guest, which makes sense. We all prefer that, right? But it records 3 separate tracks or separate tracks for each guest. You can have up to 4 guests on at a time. So for sound quality purposes, I have the ability then to edit each track individually, which actually is a lot of work. But it makes for a better recording than if I were just to record whatever sound is coming over my computer from Zoom. So
yeah, Zoom's I think everybody just dropped into that because that was the easier one to do. I think everybody was most familiar with it. From the attendee side, I think that's where people are like navigating towards it and saying, well, this is, people know how to do a Zoom meeting or a Zoom happy hour, but it's really not designed for, complicated content and recorded sessions, just as we're seeing, right? It's not really designed for that. Now, will they upgrade it? Maybe, but it's evolving, but it's still a major work in progress. And
They are upgrading a lot, but still, it's not user friendly, really.
No.
I mean, it's very difficult to share screens and navigate through different screens. It's tough.
It's very complicated. When you get it complicated with an attendee, then they leave. They just don't want to. Everybody has a short attention span, and especially now. But here's this. Who made that? One question, Tracy. Who's decided to start it at 4 a.m.?
So we decided that it needed to be available for multiple time zones, because we were thinking it was Central Time and we had it like 9 to 5, and then we thought, well, what about all the people in EMEA or LAPAM? And so it was Nicole and Liz who one day said we should have it available 24 hours. We should start, so that other time zones can get involved, which it's the right thing to do, right? To make it available.
It is, but it would be interesting to see how many of your attendees are international, right? It would be interesting to see what that is out of your total attendee demographic.
Right.
And see what that is. I went to a virtual summit that ran different tracks based on where you were located.
Yes.
Which I thought was easier, right? Because then you knew you were in the US one. You knew that you were, okay, that was your time, and the thing is, it's the 3 hours difference. But and I I was like, whoops. But it's been great. It's been very fun. I like it.
It actually started before that because there was the unrestricted hotness, which was Thailand.
Yeah, I saw that. That was at like 10 o'clock last night, right? My time.
Yes,
I think it was my
time.
Yeah, the California time. But it was, I thought, well, and then when they said in there it was going to be recorded, I thought, well, I probably want to watch that, when I'm first thing in the morning to get the most out of that one. But it was very good. This is fun, guys.
A lot of content.
Can we have more chat fests? Let's have more chat fests.
This is why it's perfect. I mean, that's why this is a conversation summit. It's because of these kind of conversations that we don't get to have.
It's
I
very
don't know if I attended a conference and I didn't know all of you, but if I would still have all these conversations.
Right.
Because we would all gravitate to the people that we know or we've seen before. This just throws people who don't know each other into a room and say, let's chat.
Right.
That's true.
I do find it very intimate, and just a client that I have working, I've noticed that with these trainings that we do, people are always very reluctant at first, but then after they get through the second day of this training, they're so much more engaged and they like it so much more. So I think the expectation is really low. So they're surprised at how much they enjoy it and how much they get out of it is so much more. But I do think, because it's like you're very up close and personal when you're looking at a screen at somebody, like you're right there. So
you're watching them. Well, and at first I did not have my camera on, right? Because I just thought, I'm going to drop in and see what it was going to be like, right? Now, that's my way of not committing, because, you're just like, okay, I'm going to drop in. And I thought, and then it was like, turn your cameras on. And it was almost like, and I saw everybody's camera was on, and I thought, all right, now I'm going to have to turn my camera on. And I thought that was, I like that. I like when there's a lot more of people showing themselves, and then we can sit there and engage better, right?
And let's look at it. We're looking into each other's homes. You know what I mean?
Well, that's it. You're actually, I'm inviting you into my house, and my right there. She gets up, and that's what I think everybody is. when you're in an office or you're at a corporate event or a trade show or whatever, you're not in your home. You're not in your relaxed environment, right?
Right.
And this is what's been so, I think, engaging for us is we get to, and you know how there's a whole thing on backgrounds on like what people have behind them and what that means. And there's this whole analysis of this. And, which I think but I think there's a level of comfort that comes out of this, right? And I've got the gardeners out in the front, I've got the windows, like, should I shut the windows or the trash man? These are all these things that are just sort of normal, but it just makes us more human, I think. It gives us more down, authentic, real, it's just us. And I think it comes across, right? As we're sitting here virtually.
I think it also gives people courage to try things because they always thought things were like perfect. And it's hard to try something when everybody else is doing it perfectly. So if you see that everybody else has a house and a dog and kids and a husband, and you see everybody's life. Everybody has the same thing you have. You're dealing with the same things that you're dealing with.
Oh, true.
Yeah. My husband doesn't know that I'm on camera talking. He thinks I'm watching something. So he walks in and, he's bringing me a smoothie, he just I'm like, honey, I'm on camera. Because it's hard because it's behind you, right? And I could not, I just didn't, I couldn't find a right spot in my room where, where I could go in the corner or something, but this is how we are. It's just sort of funny. So I like this. Very nice.
The only reason I use a green screen sometimes is so that my husband can walk behind me and nobody can see him.
Yeah, sometimes I have a screen because, to Jennifer's thing, there's this whole lighting thing, right? So I'm big into lighting because I want my face, my personality to show, and I don't want to look, sometimes, when you're not used to being on camera all the time, you can look as happy as you normally are, right? You catch yourself all of a sudden. You know how they used to tell you to put a mirror on your phone, and so when you were talking to somebody and you were getting into a tough conversation, you would look in that mirror and you go smile and make sure you're talking kindly, and don't get caught up in the anger of that. Well, it's the same thing back here. So I'm trying to mirror you guys and I'm looking at who I'm talking to. And there's this whole lighting technique and that makes you look more open and engaging by lighting yourself and in a certain way. It's pretty interesting. So I thought, well, that's, because I have a window right above my computer, which is very nice, which gives me natural light, but there's fires right now. So there's an orange haze over us right now.
It really looks gray outside and the street lights are on all day.
Oh, I know, it's terrible. I live down by the beach, so we haven't had much of the smoke, but today we have the smoke.
Sorry to hear that.
Terrible pictures.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, ladies, this has been terrific. Great conversation. Meeting all of you. Thank you for joining us.
Nice meeting you too.
Great job.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Great job. Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate you all listening in.
Yeah.
Honored to be here.
Yeah. Keep us on your journey with you. Keep sharing. Yeah. Keep sharing.
Song division later. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay. And then there's macaroni and cheese, right? Something about macaroni and cheese.
Right. Wear your ball gown.
All right. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great job.